So small and business owner operators are the number one group for falling victim to cybercrime, but they're also the ones that are spending the most, or it's costing them the most money. So this really just looks at the types in detail of what is actually happening. So reputation and revenue, specifically, they lost customers. They lost sales. Their reputation was damaged. They had staff members resign. And I've got first-hand experience where pharmacies have hit by significant cyber attacks and staff have resigned. They've walked out. They couldn't cope with the stress, which is really disappointing and sad to see. So with that, what do you do? What you need to be aware of? From a regulatory perspective, it's really important to be aware that pharmacies are subject to the Notifiable Data Breach Scheme. For those that aren't aware, that's a scheme that mandates that if there is a data breach, you need to report that to the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner and the individual who's had their data impacted. And for the example is up there in terms of what constitutes a data breach. It's not necessarily always cyber related. It can be whether that information is simply lost or stolen. In a physical sense, of course, where your database is hacked and where you accidentally give somebody the information, send an email to the wrong person. But what you really need to look at is what's an eligible data breach, because they're the ones that you need to report. And so it's those earlier conditions I just mentioned, but it also has to do something else. It has to result in the likelihood of serious harm to the individual, and you must not be able to remediate it. So it does have a clause in there saying if you can remediate the breach before it creates harm, then that's not an eligible breach and you don't necessarily need to report it. So what's the example there? So if it is, say you have data on a device that does get lost, but you're then able to recover that device, and you're confident then that that information hasn't been used, then you can pretty confidently say that it didn't result in an eligible data breach. But of course, if it is a cyber attack and they get hold of your database and they download it, you're not really going to be able to remediate that, and you're in a situation there where you do need to report it. Also worth noting, you only have 30 days to do that. And just to cover off on I mentioned harm, these are some of the things that they determine as harm: financial fraud, unauthorised credit card transactions, identity theft, emotional and physical harm, family violence, and physical harm and intimidation. So if any of those things are likely to result to be the result of a data breach, then it constitutes an eligible data breach. This was a survey conducted by the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. Quality and price. Always been and probably always will be some of the key determining factors that people use to determine what products and services they buy. But for this survey, for the first time, the number 3 reason was data privacy. So that's the changing expectations of consumers, that they now consider data privacy as one of the key determining factors in choosing which product and service that they choose. So if a customer walks into your store, and they probably have, in terms of asking about the quality of your service, and you speak to your customers about the quality of your service and you promote that as a differentiator. Price. Customers talk to you all about price all the time. But can you talk to a customer about data privacy? Would you feel comfortable if a customer came in and said to you, how do you protect my data? What measures do you have in place to ensure that my data is safe? I got caught up in the Medibank hack and my Medicare number got compromised. I've just got a new one. Am I safe to give you my details? Are you going to keep my details safe? Are you confident in having those sorts of conversations with your customers? So they want more control personally, they want businesses to do more with their protecting the data, they want government to do more, and they want more control of their children's data as well. So with these numbers there's a fairly strong expectation that the government will put in place higher levels of compliance and standards, particularly as it relates to healthcare data. 47% of people were told by an organisation that their personal data was involved in a data breach in the previous year. 47%, that's a massive number. I actually put my hand up. I didn't do the survey, but my data was caught up in a breach in the last 12 months. It was my banking data. It wasn't one of the larger ones, but I did get notification that somewhere out there some cyber criminals have my bank details. It's not a nice feeling to have. It's a worrying feeling. And further, 76% reported that they experienced harm because of that data breach. It's not all bad news though. The survey did have some good news there. Pharmacy has always been one of the trusted industries in the world, and it continues to be. The survey asked people, who do they trust more than anyone else with their data? And health service providers, pharmacists, hospitals and doctors came out on top. People already trust you for a whole host of reasons, and they trust you with your data. So it's important to maintain that trust and continue to provide the level of service you always have, but protecting their data. So it's a really good news story to build a strong platform on.